It is a wet, cold, and rainy Wednesday afternoon here in San Diego, California. Coming your way from the Ison Studios here in San Diego. It is our third episode, folks, of Press Row, covering all things happening in sports, announcing sports media, and everything else involving the business side of the sports world here, as mentioned, on this wet, soggy, cold, and rainy Wednesday afternoon. March 15th, 2023, here from the Ison Studios in San Diego. Yours truly joining you here, Callan McClurg from the home base here in San Diego, getting our third episode of Press Row off the ground and running and into attack mode here on this Wednesday. We hope that you folks are having a great start to your day here on this Wednesday as we begin to broadcast across the entire world here today. And we hope that you folks are having a tremendous start to your day. We are, again, folks, broadcasting live today via Facebook over on the Callan McClurg announcer and writer page, and also live via the Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment Network's YouTube channel, and also via our Twitch account today as well. Again, as I told you folks last week, we're still working on getting all of our main Ison Facebook page back up and running, but right now we, again, are still having some small issues right now getting that page back up and running, but we'll, again, try our best to do so when we can get that back up and running. But again, folks, to recap here on Press Row, again, we come your way here talking about the business side of the sports world, including, of course, sports media, sports broadcasting, and, of course, sports announcing. And also, we do our best to bring you top-tier sports media content. Again, we're doing our best to talk more about things away from the field of play with wins and losses and other things going on. So again, folks, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns you want to have addressed today here on the program, again, once more, hit us up in the live chat box via Facebook or Twitch chat here this afternoon. But we'll be here for at least the next hour, talking all things going on involving the sports media side, broadcasting, game operations, stat work, and whatnot. And again, reading off some great commentary, again, from our partners over at awfulannouncing.com. and via Front Office Sports as well. Folks, we will be, again, trying to have this program on a consistent start time. I know that my man Troy and also Sean Pebbles had tuned in last week, and Troy had contacted me, just kind of going off script here for a sec. Troy had reached out to me after the show on Monday and asked how often these programs are going to be. We're doing our best to keep this on a once or twice a week or weekday program here at about 1 o'clock Pacific time, where it's kind of in the wheelhouse for those you may be joining us in the Midwest, the Mountain Time Zone, the East Coast, or whatnot, and not being here at 8 o'clock at night on the West Coast, where you're up at 11 o'clock watching this program, or 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, what have you. And we're, again, trying to work around my work schedule. Again, it's going to be very, tight and compacted and busy beginning tomorrow for the next week or so, but we'll do our best to fit in a program in the afternoon. But again, once more, folks, just want to reiterate once more, we are not here talking about anything involving on-field moves or actual games. Again, this is all for the behind-the-scenes stuff, basically, with, again, the announcing side, the broadcasting side, game operations, stat work, you name it. We'll be talking about all that big news here today, and again, reading off some great commentary, again, from our partners over at both Front Office Sports and also via awfulannouncing.com. But if you have questions, comments, or concerns, again, hit the like button, subscribe, or what have you. But of course, drop your commentary as well, or your thoughts in the live chat box. We'll make sure that those comments get read as our program does roll on here today. With that, folks, this story again has been the main talking point for us here on Press Row to kick off the last two. We'll make it 3 in a row now. And as of last night, folks, on Monday, it is official. Diamond Sports Group has filed for bankruptcy protection. Per AJ Perez of Front Office Sports, the Sinclair subsidy owns 19 Bally Sports branded regional sports networks, and the company will still, though, be able to produce games during restructuring of their debt at this rate. But AJ does write, though, for FOS, the Diamond Sports Group's long-awaited bankruptcy filing finally hit the court docket on Tuesday night. The Sinclair subsidiary that does own and operate 19 different Bally Sports branded regional sports networks sought bankruptcy protection in a bid to restructure their $8 billion in debt. The petition filed in U.S. bankruptcy court from the Southern District of Texas came as the 30-day grace period triggered when Diamond Sports missed out on a $140 million interest payment back on February 15th that was set to expire. Diamond Sports is on the hook for about $2 billion in right fees annually, with nearly half of that going to the 14 Major League Baseball teams it carries. And as we all know very well, but MLB has responded to the turmoil by creating a local media department helmed by 3 former RSN executives. While MLB geared up for the possibility of producing and broadcasting games via MLB.tv, Diamond Sports says it does expect to continue to operate in the ordinary course during the Chapter 11 process. Via a statement, MLB reiterated that it's ready and able to step in if Diamond's Bally RSNs cannot or won't be able to televise games this season. The statement produced by the Major League Baseball Media Relations Department says, and quote, despite Diamond's economic situation, there is every expectation that they will continue televising all games they are committed to during the bankruptcy process, with Major League Baseball ready to produce and distribute games to fans in their local markets in the event that Diamond or any other RSN is unable to do so as required by their agreement with our clubs. Having streamed live games on MLB.tv for more than 20 years and produced live games for MLB Network since 2009, we have the experience and capabilities to deliver games to fans uninterrupted. In addition, we have hired additional seasoned local media professionals to bolster our capabilities in anticipation of this development, open and close quote. Diamond Sports' debt load is not far off what Sinclair paid to acquire the RSNs, along with the chunks of Marquee and Yes Network from Disney back in August of 2019, with federal regulators mandating that Disney to divest the RSNs as part of its purchase of 21st Century Fox. However, though, the trend of cord cutting, where cable and satellite customers paid for an RSN as part of a bundle, picked up steam after the Sinclair purchase. The company responded with Bally Sports Plus last year, which starts at $20 a month. That is also the end of the story. But folks, I will say, though, that I have been hearing and heard some conflicting remarks made on Tuesday via Jeff Sanders of the San Diego Union-Tribune. I didn't get a chance to read the full story yesterday in the local newspaper here, but I've been hearing some volleyball being played here between what Diamond is saying about what the RSNs will still be able to do. But I've also heard that maybe this cannot be a thing that comes to fruition, or maybe that it will be an MLB produced product. And now, like I said, especially when we said on Monday, we had 4 teams now in Major League Baseball who may not right now get revenue from their RSN, which includes the Padres, the Reds, the Guardians, and the Diamondbacks. Now, again, I was not able to finish reading that Jeff Sanders story in the San Diego Union-Tribune on Monday. But at least, though, that I would at least speculate right now that, or at least in my opinion, think, though, that despite the bankruptcy filing, that Bally will still be able to produce the content. But I still think, though, there's still uncertainty. And I think I'm going to be this way until we actually see more put out in writing, whether it's from Bally, from Diamond, or Sinclair, or maybe from the MLB front office, mainly about baseball, because the NBA right now is almost at the end of their year. The NHL is almost at the end of their year, though I know that both the NBA and the NHL usually will produce or stream or show, I should say, or telecast the first round playoff games for home teams if they are, in fact, in the NBA or Stanley Cup playoffs. But it's more of a thing affecting baseball because of the high number and high volume of teams that this bankruptcy filing is going to affect. You're talking about 14 of the 30 teams. That's nearly half of the league being affected by what's going on with Bally and Diamond filing for bankruptcy as of yesterday. And also, $2 billion in right fees right now annually is owed by Diamond, which goes to nearly 14 of the Major League Baseball franchises. But as I have said, though, folks, now, despite maybe the concern meter for me going through the roof here over the past 48 hours, I will once again reiterate that I'm really glad and really have to praise Major League Baseball for how they have handled this situation. Now, I would have liked to have seen that done, though, too, with the lockout last season. But that's a different story for a different day, though. But I really, though, I think you have to give credit where credit is due to Rob Manfred and the baseball front office. Though I know that Rob is probably not everyone's, best friend when it comes to commissioners in professional sports. But from the day, though, of the beginning of spring training this year, where the commissioner was very blunt and honest at the State of the League address, basically to kick off spring training, where the commissioner from the get-go said, we are ready to step in because we have had this track record for 20 plus years that we can handle this by ourselves or on our own if in fact we have to be there to provide aid to Diamond, Sinclair, and then the Valley networks, though. But I still, though, want to see more about what is the long-term plan, though, if in fact the worst comes to worst and more stuff hits the fan and the RSNs are destroyed like Alderaan in episode 4 of Star Wars. I want to really see more come out of this, though, about what will the plan be. Now, I did read, though, in this UT article, courtesy of Padres beat writer Jeff Sanders late on Tuesday night, though, about the broadcast team. There was some concerns maybe from Padre fans about Don Orsillo and Mark Grant, Andy Halloran, and even Bob Scanlon about, what would happen if, in fact, Diamond does go down and Bally goes down, and would it become a new broadcast team because the Padres aren't playing these games on Bally Sports San Diego? That is not going to be the case, though, with Don and Mud, Scan, and Annie being hired by Padre. They're Padre employees, so they are club employees working for the station. And I think that also goes to Commissioner Manfred's point he made earlier in spring training, though, is they want to still have some type of consistency when it does come or boil down to how the games will be presented, with the whole thing with Bally Sports being a really big talking point at this juncture of the season. And with this announcement now being made as of Tuesday with the 30-day grace period going bye-bye, and now the Chapter 11 has been filed. But still, I still, though, still don't want to celebrate because I'm still kind of concerned, though, about what this will in fact mean. Now, we have heard, though, that Bally and Diamond will still be able to produce the game. So it's going to be, operations as normal, despite what's gone on right now with Chapter 11 with Bally. But folks, if you have any thoughts about this, and I really want to hear, though, if you're watching us here on YouTube or on Twitch or via Facebook, I really want to hear, though, and even if you're joining us via the podcast today on Anchor and Spotify, I really want to hear from you if you are a sports fan that does have Bally as your RSN. Where is your concern right now, mainly from the baseball side again? Because I know right now the NBA is still going on, NHL, but I want to hear more about if you are a Major League Baseball fan living in a market right now with Bally Sports as your RSN. Are you concerned about maybe losing access to your baseball team's games, maybe college games with college baseball, college softball, maybe as the spring goes on? I really want to hear from you about that today or until our next episode next week, because this is going to be a very interesting couple of days, for that matter, maybe a week. But also, now that we are sitting almost 2 full weeks away from the start of the Major League Baseball season, I really want to hear from you either today or through the course of the next week or so before we come back and join you on March 23rd. I want to hear where your concern is if you are a baseball fan mainly, living in a market like, for example, San Diego or Orange County or LA. If you have or if you are concerned about what this might mean, where it may become an ordeal, where now you have to fork out more money to buy a MLB.TV package because of the Bally uncertainty. That's where I kind of think this saga might be taking us, is more money being forked out and relying on streaming services. And I think Steve Woods of 97.3 The Fan here in San Diego had a great point this morning on the morning talk show with Ben and Woods, is that streaming platforms are great, but then you get the buffering, you get the signal going out, your Wi-Fi goes down. For example, here in the studio, our internet went down literally 10 minutes before the show started today here on this Wednesday afternoon. And I had to go back, unplug the router and stuff. That's what I don't think baseball wants to have happen, is maybe something like this happens. And I know you can't, fix all the problems in the world, though, when it comes to, Wi-Fi going down or buffering during a game. But but folks, I do want to hear, though, if you are in a Bally Sports area, San Diego, SoCal, West, Arizona, Great Lakes, Southwest, any of the Bally Sports owned areas, I want to hear from you over the course of today's program or up until our next program next week, though. I want to hear from you, though, about what you believe is your concern right now. And I would probably also sadly blame the rain here in San Diego for the studio Wi-Fi going down. And I agree with my great friend Christy Wilson, who writes in with two shocked faces, because Christy, this is going to be a very big story that we've been following here on Press Row, but also because it's just uncertain. There's just a lot of uncertainty. That's been a big word I've been using for 3 episodes, though, talking about Bally Sports here, mainly in San Diego, because it's very concerning about what this might mean, though, as time goes on. And yes, Christy, the studio Wi-Fi did go down about 10 minutes before the show started today, but thankfully we got it fixed, though. But again, the weather here in San Diego, out of control. It's been raining off and on since last night. It rained very heavily over the evening. And this usually happens when it rains here, is that, when you're used to the sun being out, 300 days out of the year, this sort of stuff happens. But yeah, the Wi-Fi did go down, and thankfully we got it all fixed. And we are, of course, rolling and going live here at this point in time on this Wednesday. And again, we are thankful to have you folks here joining us here today. With that, folks, we'll segue over to a story from awfulannouncing.com concerning more about college athletics, and also talking more about potential college media deals at this rate, with Arizona State's president claiming no discussions have gone on between the Sun Devils and a potential move to the Big 12, despite a report done by CBS. In this story, courtesy of awfulannouncing.com, comes from Andrew Buckholtz, who writes, one of the much discussed storylines in college sports has been about levels of contact. That can be about coaches contacting high school recruits or players at other schools. Sometimes we'll even enter the transfer portal, about schools contacting coaches employed elsewhere. And on the realignment front, about schools' discussion with conferences and conferences' discussions with television networks. In each of those arenas, some of that contact is not actually supposed to be happening, which leads to some interesting divides between reporting and public commentary. And the latest there comes on the realignment front, with plenty of recent reporting on talks between the Pac-12 schools and Big 12, but with Arizona State President Michael Crow telling Piper Hansen and Alex Wakefield of the State Press, or the ASU student paper, there have been no discussions with the Big 12 conference on the Sun Devils moving out of the Pac-12 conference. The full quote is put out in the student-run paper at ASU. Part of the statement, and I will not read the full story here from the student paper, but partially, CBS Sports reported last week that the Big 12 renewed contact with Arizona State, U of A, Colorado, and Utah about and that the 4 schools' interest in leaving for the Big 12 has quote-unquote picked up in recent weeks. But as of right now, President Crow did say there have been no discussions with the Big 12 conference on moving. I mean, there's been discussions between everyone everywhere and on all things related to where our conference is going and where stuff's going to end up and what's happening. But we are committed to the Pac-12, open and close quote. But meanwhile, the key part of that specific report from CBS, which was published back on March 3rd, referenced by Crow, it's a piece titled Big 12 in Contact with Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah as Pac-12 media rights future remains uncertain, written by both Shiham Jararja and referencing reporting from CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd. Part of that statement, or part of that story from CBS reads that the Big 12 recently renewed contact with 4 Pac-12 schools, U of A, ASU, Colorado, and Utah, as TV contract negotiations for the Pac-12 continue to flounder. Sources confirmed to CBS Sports' Dennis Dodd, March will be a pivotal time for the Pac-12 to either deliver a new contract or risk losing key members of their league. Further, Dennis also says the interest of the Four Corners schools leaving for the Big 12 has picked up in recent weeks, as Pac-12 media right negotiations have all but stalled, moving into a 9th month. At first glance, Crow's no discussions comments would seem to directly dispute CBS's reporting, but there is some potential wiggle room there. While many might take Crow's no discussions with the Big 12 Conference on moving as a contradiction of renewed contact, the on moving at the end suggests a potential qualifier where Crow, seen above in February in the story, can say any discussions below the level of detailed and specific talk about a move, which would likely not happen until the long debated Pac-12 media deal does come in for good or for ill, don't count. His also immediate caveat of there's been discussions between everyone everywhere also provides some further wiggle room, even if he continues that sentence by talking about our conference, meaning the Pac-12. And it's also interesting that while Crow cites no discussions in response to the state press or the ASU student paper, it does not specifically go after CBS, which you might expect if that report was completely and also fully inaccurate. It's also worth noting that contact between a school and a conference does not necessarily directly involve the school president, especially at early stages. The school's president going to play an important role in if a move actually happens or not, and in the details of it. But initial reach out or outreach in sensitive situations like this often comes through less prominent channels. So, folks, this is going to be another thing we're going to be following for a while because of the bombshells, of course, of Oklahoma and Texas leaving for the SEC from the Big 12, and, of course, USC and UCLA bolting from the Pac-12 to the Big 10. The Pac-12, I think, would have to really score with one big outlet, whether it's ESPN, CBS, maybe Fox or whatnot. I know that the Fox deal was not been that good. I think it's like $250 million, I want to say, or something like that. But the Pac-12 desperately needs to do something. Otherwise, one of the best known, well-known, and I would even say well-respected college conferences out there is gone goodbye, because I don't know, and I still don't know, how the Pac-12 can fully recover from losing two of their biggest flagship members in both the USC Trojans and the UCLA Bruins to the Big Ten Conference because of their television deals right now with their own network and via Fox, I want to say as well with the Big Ten Network. But the Pac-12, I believe, cannot afford to lose anybody else. And I think, though, it's good, though, to hear somebody, though, like President Crow from ASU saying or claiming there's been no discussions with the Big 12, though, refuting the CBS remarks, though. But I think, though, showing some small slither of loyalty to the Pac-12 conference. Because I do think, though, that if you lose any more members of this conference, and especially if you lose, and especially, folks, other than ASU, if you lose the primetime-led Colorado Buffaloes, who I also heard this morning have already sold out their spring game that's going to be on ESPN because of Deion Sanders going to Colorado. If somehow, some way, the Pac-12 now loses Colorado, being driven by Deion Sanders, that, I believe, is another big blow that I don't think the Pac-12 can survive the 10 count from the referee in a boxing match. So if you also lose the Arizona market to the Big 12, on top of a very good school in Utah, very competitive in football, great basketball program, very good baseball program, who I think has really held their own since moving to the Pac-12 from the Mountain West Conference. But now you have to factor in losing primetime, Coach Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and losing Colorado. If you lose any of those four, but I think if you lose Colorado because of your television coverage contracts, then the Pac-12 really has to do something urgent to keep their conference going. For the sheer fact, though, of SC and UCLA are gone. Okay, we know that they're gone to the Big 12, to the Big 10. Now you factor in perhaps losing both of your schools in Arizona, but now maybe losing a hot shot program in the Colorado Buffaloes because of Deion Sanders. And how Deion has already turned this program around, who had, I think, they had a pretty good run back in the 80s or the 90s back in the day. But now perhaps losing Colorado, and probably with one of the biggest hires in college football in recent memory, in Deion Sanders, who I know did wonders at Jackson State with that HBCU, and how he turned around that program and how they were getting on ESPN or on the ESPN Family Network so consistently because Deion had turned around that program, but also about how Deion's already helped turn around Boulder and turned around the Buffs in Colorado with 5-star recruits, with, like a 500% increase in ticket sales. Social media following has skyrocketed for the social media team with the Buffs. And how now the Pac-12, now I believe, has to look at Colorado as being that torchbearer now, with the Trojans and Bruins being gone after next season or this season, whenever in fact they make that move to, the Big Ten. Because I know that UCLA is still going to be forking out money to Berkeley with them leaving. But now I almost feel like Colorado becomes the school out of the four that the Pac-12 cannot lose to the Big 12. Because that will ding the TV contract. But also I can probably, though, folks, see why right now a lot of the networks could be a little leery about the Pac-12. Forget USC and UCLA for a second. Let's forget about them for a second. I could see, though, why a partner out there, Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC, ESPN, I can probably see why a network would be reluctant to strike a deal for a huge chunk of change and a big check with the Pac-12, because you are feeling uncertain about the future of the conference now that 4 other schools, per this report released by CBS and by some other outlets, now are saying that they're trying to, or that the Big 12 is trying to poach 4 schools away from the Pac-12. The Pac-12 has to do whatever it takes to keep these 4 schools intact. But mainly now, you have to do whatever it takes to keep Colorado in your conference. Because now, like I said, you have Deion Sanders, who again turned around Jackson State at the HBCU level. And what he has single-handedly done to reinvigorate fan interest with this football program in Boulder, Colorado. The deal, I believe, has to be something that will keep these 4 schools from leaving the conference. Now, again, I also, still praise ASU President Crow, though, about the Pac-12 is our conference. Not jumping to conclusions about saying, we've been thinking about the Big 12. We've been thinking about this or thinking about that, though. So it's good, though, to hear, though, from President Mike Crow at ASU that the school is committed to being in the Pac-12. Because I think, though, that President Crow sees, though, what the effect could be with the Trojans out, the Bruins out, but also what it could also mean, though, for the Pac-12 as a whole, though, if they were to lose the Sun Devils, the Wildcats, the Utes, and even the Buffaloes. But then you also even think about, like, schools up in the Bay Area, like Stanford or Cal, maybe even UW or Wazoo leaving for somewhere else because of where the money's at with television. So I think, folks, this is going to be another story to watch for a while, but mainly over the summer when the school year is done. College athletics are out of session for the summer. It's going to be interesting to see what will happen come the fall with college football, and if we hear any other rumblings of other schools departing conferences to go somewhere else, because I really think that this is going to be one of the biggest off seasons probably in college athletics, solely based on what the long-term impact could be for college athletics on television, because of how, the realignment is really, I think, starting to kind of crush. It's starting to kind of crush college athletics a little bit with all the realignment. And I've long said that, folks. And if you know me well, I get why it's being done. But then I think about like conferences like the Pac-12 imploding because TV is one thing, but also because schools are leaving to follow the dollar. So we'll see what happens, folks. But again, it'll be a very, very, very interesting storyline to follow as more time does go on here with college athletics at this rate. But I really think it's going to be a huge ordeal if, in fact, the Pac-12 loses any other members, and especially if they do, in fact, somehow, some way, if they do, in fact, lose Colorado, because of, again, Deion Sanders has been single-handedly turning around this Colorado football program. With that, folks, moving over to the XFL, and St. Louis has emerged as the proving ground for the XFL as attendance numbers prove that St. Louis misses out on having professional football. The St. Louis Battlehawks' first home game against the Arlington Renegades on Sunday at the Dome at America's Place, the former home of the NFL's St. Louis Rams, set an attendance record for the XFL with 38,310 fans in attendance for the Battlehawks game versus the Renegades on Sunday. The Rams played in St. Louis from 1995 till 2015, winning their first Super Bowl championship in Atlanta on January 30th of 2000. The 38,000 total in St. Louis is nearly half of the Week 4 attendance for the XFL, and a Week 4 season high of 75,000 fans across the league's 4 games. And for the year, attendance is more than 220,000. The high attendance, though, does not seem to be slowing anytime soon, which bodes well for the league as a whole, with St. Louis having more than 18,000 season ticket holders, more than double that of the team that played 3 years ago in 2020, has already sold more than 27,000 seats for its second home game on Saturday. And the city is also a top XFL market by ticket revenue and by local partnerships as well. TV ratings throughout the first 3 weeks of the season, however, have been a different story, sadly. After a slow start to the season, ratings did dip by 50% from Week 1 to Week 2. In Week 3, it also dropped to 11% compared to Week 2 as well. After the league filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in April of 2020 due to pandemic-related effects, former WWE great Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia, and Redbird Capital Partners purchased the XFL for $15 million in August of that year from WWE founder Vince McMahon's Alpha Entertainment. In May of 2022, the league struck a multi-year deal with Disney to show all 43 games across its family of channels, including ABC, ESPN, and also via FX. Wow. Again, folks, I'll reiterate, if you know me very well, football is not my forte. Football is not one of my go-to sports. And I've not been a very big fan of the product in general because of I don't find the game interesting. And also, why support a league that left your market? St. Louis, I believe, though, is writing a different narrative. And as much, folks, as they tried with the AAF here in San Diego, it just did not have the same feel of the San Diego Chargers. Yeah, it was the Fleet. Yeah, it was San Diego legend or San Diego native Mike Martz as the head coach. But playing, though, in the former home of the Chargers with a crowd of maybe 25,000 people at the one game I went to against Atlanta, it just wasn't feasible here in San Diego. And at least, though, but St. Louis still has that itch and that, that drive to still support football in St. Louis. And the fact that the Dome is still there and is still being, the place for the Battlehawks, though, has been great. But if this is not some type of indication that St. Louis is still hungry for football, I don't know what else could be a very big factor, other than the fact that they had 38,000 fans for their first home game, and they're going to be at about 20,000 for their next game coming up this week, though. St. Louis, I applaud you, because I know that San Diego and St. Louis, we're in the same boat. We are that meme of the two, buff guys, shaking, giving a high five. And it says, San Diego on one side, St. Louis on the other side for sports fans. And it says, hating the NFL. I think that San Diego and St. Louis, have or had the same type of feeling towards the NBA in Seattle, like how Seattle resented the NBA for so long because of them moving Masonics to Oklahoma City. That's how I think San Diego and St. Louis feel about seeing the Chargers and Rams leave for greener pastures in Los Angeles because of the stadiums, despite those years, though, of where St. Louis and San Diego bent over backwards for so long to support, the team despite losing seasons and woefully bad ownership who didn't care about the fans' interest or trying to get a stadium deal done and moved out to a new market. And I really applaud St. Louis for, again, showing that football can still thrive, though, in the market where it left. Now, I can't say the same thing, folks, here in San Diego. And just in retrospect, folks, there's been a long debate about a new arena here in San Diego. And it's been kind of dragged out like the stadium issues with the Chargers here for a long time. And I know a lot of people say that San Diego needs an NBA or NHL franchise and a big enough arena to host both teams. I am here to tell you from my personal, humble opinion, that's not going to happen in San Diego. For the reason being that with hockey, at least, there's two markets up in Orange County who already have tapped into the San Diego TV market who can easily, I'm sure, say, what are you doing? That is our fan base down there. We're going to say no and block a team in San Diego for the NHL. But also, folks, why in the world would a league like the NBA, for example, want to take another chance on a market who has already failed not once but twice to support an NBA franchise like San Diego has? The Rockets didn't last long here. The Clippers didn't last long here. What makes anybody out there think that a market like San Diego deserves to have an NBA team when they failed twice in a row within 5 years? Let's get off the soapbox, folks, about the NBA coming to San Diego, because a league like that does not want to take a gamble for a third time on a market that's already failed miserably to support the franchise. At the same time, same ordeal with the NHL not coming here. The Lakers and Clippers can look at San Diego and say, what are you doing? That is our market for TV. Fans of ours live down there. Thanks, but no thanks. Move is blocked. At least with St. Louis, folks, they're doing it the right way. And I think that they even did it the right way the first time the league launched in 2020 because St. Louis still had that itch. I don't think that itch is here in San Diego for football. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's my own gripe about the sport in general. But I still would think, though, that if the XFL did come to San Diego, I know it's not the Chargers, folks. I know it's not the NFL. But I still think that if the XFL came to San Diego eventually, there would still be some type of football itch. Because of Snapdragon Stadium being 35,000 seats, I think I think it would work. I really do think it would work, though. But I think it would have to be after this season concludes. Because if the TV viewership is dropping week by week, that does begin to raise my concern, mainly about spring football. Because I think, folks, even though the USFL tried, the AAF tried, the XFL has tried 3 different times now, I really think that football fatigue is a real thing. And again, folks, let me just re-clarify here. Those 2 words of mine are not because I'm not the biggest football fan. I just think, though, that people over time get worn out with constant football. Now, yes, I think my man John Alcorn would be on that boat, though, of like, year-round football, indoor football, outdoor football, you name it. But I know that some fans out there who are big football fans do, I think, wear down over time because of the constant grind of the sport. But I also think, though, folks, that that St. Louis, I just don't know, though, if the NFL would ever go back to St. Louis. And I would hate to be the guy to say, never say never. But I am on that boat or that train of thought with both St. Louis and San Diego. Now I know though that there could be a plan in place though to make Snapdragon uh feasible to host 55,000 fans for the NFL with some like temporary like building, I think. That's why the stadium kind of looks like it's half done because of maybe the potential shot of the NFL coming back, which I don't see happening anytime soon, sadly. But I give a lot of love and respect though to you people in St. Louis who I think are proving that you're still a football town. And again, I really can't say that about San Diego because of the disdain towards the Chargers and Maspano's family. I know a lot of my friends have some followed the team to LA. To their credit, they followed the Chargers up north. And again, I'm not gonna, laugh at them for doing so. That's their team and that's their prerogative. But I know a lot of people, myself, my parents, friends of mine, who, when the Chargers announced that they were leaving, found new NFL teams, or in my case, you gave up the sport in general because they left your market. So why bother supporting a league who had a team in your market or your hometown for 50 plus years, and then because of greed and, stubbornness and ignorance and arrogance and pompous and circumstance, left your market for a market that you don't like, San Diego and LA having their, city rivalry. Why support that product? Hockey and basketball for me are different because I grew up without having the NHL or NBA in my hometown. That's why maybe, or usually, that I look towards Orange County, Angels and Ducks, Angels being my American League franchise, other than the Padres being my main team, but Angels being my other team. But the Ducks, NHL team, AHL team is here in San Diego. And to the Lakers, because that was the first NBA team I remember watching on local TV, because that's all we got down here back in the day on KCAL 9 and KCOP 13 when I was growing up, was chicken stew calling Laker games on local TV down here. And that's kind of where the San Diego fandom lies for the NBA, is with the Lakers. And it's split between the Ducks and Kings and probably transplants who live here for the NHL. But with St. Louis, though, folks, again, I remember very well going to see my uncle and aunt when they were living in Hartford, Connecticut. I flew out to Hartford via St. Louis, via Lambert International Airport. I remember flying in, and my flight to Hartford got delayed because of the weather, and I think there was some mechanical problems with the plane. But I went to the bar and got myself a nice ice cold Budweiser, and I was making small talk with the bartender, and I was wearing a San Diego Seals t-shirt that particular day, traveling out to Hartford. And I told the bartender, you and I have a lot in common. And when she said, why? And I said, I pointed to San Diego on my chest for the Seals t-shirt. And I said, San Diego native. And I'm sure you're born and raised in St. Louis. We both hate the NFL. And her and I think, talked for like half an hour about how much that the Ram fan base had revolted against the Cronkies and against Stan, and how it was like those last couple of years, despite having Jared Goff and Aaron Donald, like you really couldn't like celebrate the Rams having like a good year or whatnot, because you knew damn well they were out the door after 2015 to go to LA to play at the Coliseum in 2016. And we both talked about that, but also how like St. Louis, despite the Rams having that Super Bowl, has always been a baseball town because of the Cardinals and their success. The Blues have been a very good team in the NHL 2019 Cup champs. Now that they're getting MLS now with St. Louis City FC, who's off to a great start right now in the MLS season, that St. Louis, I think, though, really, I believe, has proved that football can work if you go back to the market. But I just don't think it'll be the NFL anytime soon, though. But again, all the love and praise, though, to those of you in St. Louis who might be watching this program. For those of you who are still, though, supporting football in your hometown, whether it's the Battlehawks or colleges or high school, but proving, though, that you can still make it work in a market like St. Louis, who, again, still, I think, has that revolt against the Rams, because here you could have had a Super Bowl championship a couple years ago when they beat the Bengals, in LA or whatnot. But at the same time, though, hopefully they'll let the St. Louis sports fans will still support the Battlehawks as the year does prolong and continue. With that, folks, to the other brand of football that, of course, is international soccer with the World Cup, which again is coming, folks, coming to North America in 2026, but also includes, folks, a new 104-game format beginning in 2026 with 39 days of competition would make the 2026 World Cup the longest ever. And the new format will see groups of 4 teams into 12 different groups. As Doug Greenberg of FOS reports that the World Cup is already set to expand to 48 teams when it comes to North America in 2026. And now FIFA has updated the tournament format, a change that will make it longer and add more games to the schedule. At the annual Congress in Rwanda, the FIFA Council formally approved a move from the 64-game tournament that has been used since 1998 to a new 104-game tournament that will span 39 days, making this the longest tournament in FIFA's history. The field will be divided into 12 groups of 4 teams. As in previous editions, the top 2 teams after group play will advance to the knockout stage. But unlike before, but top 8 third-place teams will also advance to create a new 32-team knockout bracket. FIFA's original proposed format to accommodate the extra teams would have created 16 groups of 3 for 80 total games. However, though, many critics raised issues with that plan, as it would dilute the excitement of simultaneous final group stage games and potentially create collusion among nations to advance to the knockout stage. FIFA will also plan to make up the lost time the extra games will require by reducing the pre-tournament release period from 23 days to 16 days, less than in previous tournaments, but still significantly more time than the players had to prep for the 2022 World Cup last year in Qatar. Wow. 104 total games, folks. This just takes March Madness and puts it to shame with this new format. And I think, folks, it's only fair, though, because of the expansion of the tournament field, but also you have to factor in now, you're talking about 3 separate countries hosting games now for the World Cup in regards to Canada hosting games, Mexico, and even the U.S. hosting games. So I think, folks, this is going to be a great step in the right direction. And this, I think, adds more excitement. And I think it also further, will keep people engaged for the entire group stage tournament. However, I do believe there might be some small concern about the new schedule format because of practice time, team chemistry, but also rest time maybe could be a thing. But also, I think travel becomes, travel becomes a thing, though, as well, depending on whereabouts your group is going to be. Are you going to be in Canada, in the U.S., in Mexico? Because that could be something that could be very interesting, though, about constant travel if you're not playing at the same facility or in the same state or same province of Canada or Mexico, or even here in the U.S. playing in the same state or same city. But folks, this is going to be very interesting to see how this works. So again, 12 groups of 4 teams each. So the top 2 will still advance after the group stage. But now, though, the top 8 third-place teams will also advance, creating a 32-team knockout bracket, which almost, folks, sounds like, in a way, almost like a wild card in baseball or in the NHL. That you're still adding you're adding a incentive to the third best group or team in a group to still play in the knockout round. So I actually like that incentive, folks, a lot, because it just seems like, though, you're giving incentive, though, for being in third. Now, I know that we're in a society right now that frowns upon participation trophies and everyone gets a ribbon and stuff like that. I get that. I do, though, like this idea, though, of still giving that team that maybe had a tie somewhere or maybe missed out on the top 2 seeds because of goal differential or accumulation of points on discipline. So I like that there's still some sort of small incentive. This is basically like a wild card. You're taking your top two teams, but you're adding that third team into the mix to be a part of the tournament and going into the knockout stage. I do though. I agree though. But I mainly agree though that the plan before the 104 game tournament would have been something interesting. Because like it would really, I think, dilute or dial down or bring down the product on the field, though. If say a team's already 2-0, you have that 1-1 team who has to, beat somebody, but maybe one certain group or team, I should say, elects to maybe not play their starters. They kind of, just kind of, take a smoke break and don't play the game as hard as they should, though. That could create some sort of like integrity of the match or integrity of the game issue, maybe, perhaps. But I will, though, think, though, that I think the main key here that I'm looking at here is I'm a little concerned about FIFA reducing the time between the tournament starting and how much time teams will get to actually train and practice together. Because I think we saw that firsthand, folks, maybe with Team USA last year in Qatar, the whole thing with Greg Berhalter and Gio Reyna boiling down, and that's still going on right now with U.S. soccer. But I kind of wonder, though, if shortening the period, the pre-release tournament or the pre-tournament release period to 16 days than 23 days, that has me a little concerned about injuries happening during training camp, where maybe a team like Mexico loses a Chicharito, for example, or Team USA loses a Christian Pulisic, or even a Gio Reyna, or loses a Matt Turner, for example. You would hate to, I think, see a team walk into their first match of the tournament, but because of the shortened amount of time from 23 days to 16 days in between or before the tournament begins to practice, I think you would hate to see a team lose a big star player to an injury suffered because of friendly fire or because of one wrong step in training. I know that could happen in a regular game, though, but that, I believe, becomes a caveat I think that I would probably watch very, very closely as time does move on with the tournament format for FIFA. Again, folks, they are going to be expanding the 2026 World Cup field to a full 104-game format starting this season, or for that matter, starting in 2026, I should say, coming up in about 3 years' time. But I have my concerns mainly about the release time or the teams getting a chance to practice together, injuries, and I like the fact though they're trying their best to kind of knock out any potential chances maybe of anything occurring with perhaps collusion maybe or integrity of the game when it boils down to the format perhaps where it could have were perhaps the plan in place of 16 groups of 3 for 80 games. But again, you have that odd number. A team goes 2-0. They don't, play up to their potential to go 3-0, pad their stats maybe. I like the fact that they're going to this new format, though, where, again, we already know, folks, about FIFA and their track record, that they don't want to have any more stains on their reputation. They don't want to have any more stains on their reputation when it boils down, or comes down, I should say, to collusion about World Cup bidding. But they don't want to have integrity of the game becoming part of their collusional their collusional past. Again, with the bids for Qatar, the bids for any of the World Cups, but also again about Sepp Blattner back in the day, them bribing officials and stuff like that or whatnot. So I like the 104 game plan, though. I'm a little more concerned, though, that maybe a team losing a star player to an injury before their first game, because now you have shortened the amount of time. So you've gone from almost 2 weeks time to from 3 weeks time maybe, or 2.5 weeks to now 2 weeks. So 16 days. But I still would be concerned, though, about that small amount of time that they would have to get together, practice and all that other stuff. I should say it's not nonsense, but practice. Get that team chemistry. Then someone goes down with an injury because they kind of felt rushed during the course of the pre-tournament. Of the pre-tournament training. But again, folks, FIFA going now to a 104 game format beginning play in 2026. Also, folks, I did see one interesting tidbit from the MLS Pro 2 League that came down, I want to say, yesterday on Tuesday. They're going to begin testing a new substitution rule for the upcoming season for MLS Pro 2. So essentially, folks, this is basically the second league to Major League Soccer. And they're going to be experimenting with a new rule about basically pace of play for substitutes coming into or out of the match, where now if a team takes, I believe, more than 10 seconds to sub off their player and get their new player in, they would be the substitute would be held off the field for a full minute of gameplay, and essentially they would be penalized by playing for a full minute with 10 men only and not their usual 11. So I'll be interested to see what they actually do and how they, in fact, go about their business. We're trying to make that sort of change work at the MLS Pro 2 level. With that, folks, we will cut out of here for the afternoon on this Wednesday. We thank you all again for joining us here today on Press Row, Episode 3. We will, folks, again, remind you here that we will try our best to come your way here at least once or twice a week. Again, whenever my work schedule allows me to do so here. Again, we talk all things here involving what is going on with sports media, sports broadcasting, game operations, stat work, and stuff like that. We are, folks, again, trying to get, or eventually going to try to get to some interview guests lined up here to share their experiences or talk about their side of a story when it comes to game ops or any of that sort of stuff eventually. We're, again, just trying once more here to get this program off the ground and running. This is our third episode. We had a very great episode on Monday. We had over 110 people watch in total, so we thank you all so much for doing so here. But again, thank you all again for your support and for joining us here on Intergalactic Sports and Entertainment here via Twitch, via Facebook, and also via YouTube. Again, folks, we're trying our best to once more get our ICE and Facebook page back up and running here. We've had some issues with it over the past couple of months and weeks for that matter. But again, you probably have seen our content via YouTube or on Twitch with either John and Trevor, John and James, and myself here. But again, we don't have a full-blown hub right now for Intergalactic Sports Entertainment. You have probably seen John and James branch off on Punt Off on their own Facebook page. Trevor's been using our Twitch channel for 6 for 6 and also for Across the Galaxy for our Star Wars podcast. But again, folks, we're